All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night, in the dusty recesses of their minds, wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dream with open eyes to make it possible. This I did.
So here we are at the end of the Uncharted series of reviews. So now I won't be covering Uncharted the Thieves, and for reasons I'll get to at the end of the video. So with that being said, I actually vividly remember the day I bought Uncharted 3, which, well, that was so long ago. But anyways, that means I'm going to be going into my history with the game first before going into the actual game's history. Uncharted 3. Why do I vividly remember this game? Well, because Uncharted 3 was the very first game I ever attempted to record and upload to YouTube. Not on this channel, of course. And the reason I vividly remember the game is because recording this game gave me so much hell. The capture card I used at the time was the Blackmagic Intensity Shuttle, but after recording about 4 to 5 minutes only, my computer would turn off by itself. And after doing some research, I learned that the capture card was causing my PC to overheat. Which honestly is just funny to me now, because the PC I had back in 2011 was so cheap that the case I used for it was the case of my father's old desktop computer from 1997. And of course, I used the useless fans that came with Intel processors back in the day. Needless to say, I fried my CPU while trying to record a video game. And boy, did we come far, didn't we, baby? And that's my actual history with the game. So yeah, with that being said, time to jump into the game's history. Uncharted 3 was released 2 years after Uncharted 2. Yes, Uncharted 3 was released a mere 2 years after Uncharted 2, unlike Uncharted 4, which took 5 years to come out and ended up being... well, I don't want to spoil what I think of the game in this video. But anyways, regarding this game's release, I was actually surprised that the game looked as good as it did and was an actual full game, considering that to the best of my knowledge, only half of Naughty Dog worked on this game. Why half, you ask? Well, that's because after Uncharted 2 was done, Naughty Dog decided to make 2 games instead of 1, with the first game being Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception, and the second game being the critically acclaimed The Last of Us. So that begs the question, did Naughty Dog make a mistake by splitting in half, or did they make the right choice? And by that I mean, is the game any good? So let's find out. The game is set 2 years after the events of Uncharted 2. I'm seeing a lot of 2's in this equation. The game was released 2 years after Uncharted 2, and the game is set 2 years after Uncharted 2, which also has a 2. Anyway, the game starts with Nate and Sully walking down the foggy streets of London with a very catchy beat playing in the background. Here we meet Talbot, a graduate of Hogwarts. Well, not really, but people seem to think that for reasons that will be obvious later. They meet up with him in this bar so that Nate could trade his Drake ring for a whole lot of cash, but things take a wrong turn when they learn that the money is fake, and so all hell breaks loose. And I really enjoy this section. There's just something funny about watching a 60-year-old guy kicking so much ass. Oh look, same character models for the enemies. Now, I know that this should be like a negative on the game, but I actually find it more amusing than anything. Maybe it's the fact that this reminds me that I'm playing a video game, or maybe they could just be twins. I mean, hey, that's a possibility. I mean, twins exist. So we make our escape and we are introduced to the main villains of this game, which I find interesting since never in an Uncharted game have we been introduced to the main bad guys in the first 10 minutes of the game. But anyway, the main baddies in this game are Talbot and Catherine. They work for an old secret society and they are after the treasure that Drake's ring can unlock. After a little bit of back and forth, they die. And we get a flashback to when Nate was 15 years old. Finally, we get to see the monkey helpless and oh, come on, he's 15! Screw this! He's 15! Okay. Damn it. So anyways, in the flashback we learn how Nate acquired the ring and met Sully for the first time. And well, goddamn, look at this young sexy motherfucker. Well, I say young, but he's 40 in this flashback. But anyways, Nate sees Sully trying to make a copy of the key to open the glass safe. And while Sully is distracted, he steals the key and comes back later that day to steal the ring for himself. But of course, not before he steals some treasure first. I guess some things never change. But after that, we get to the... Oh, for the love of God, come on, man. Anyway, we finally get to the glass safe, at which point Nate realizes that it was an ambush, and off we go to play our first escape sequence in the game, and Nate's first confirmed kill! And the escape sequence ends with Sully helping Nathan and essentially terminating his contract with Marlowe. And that's how these two guys met. And honestly, this scene gets more and more endearing the more I replay the game. I love the way Nate tries to reach for that beer, and well, there's nothing else to say. Other than personally, as an Uncharted fan, I could not imagine a better backstory for Nate and Sully. And to be honest, first time playing the game, the backstory did not really connect with me that much, but as I said, the more I replay it, the more I notice more meaning behind the spoken words. But anyways, this is where the flashback ends with Sully saying,
I see great things in our future, kid. Great things.
Yeah, great things.
El goddamn Dorado.
And we are transported back to the present, where we learn that of course Nate and Sully aren't dead. That's because Cutter was a double agent. The gang meets up with Chloe. What the hell happened to her face between games? Wait, Elena. Oh God, seriously? Am I the only one that notices the drastic change of appearance for all the characters between games? It's like they're completely different people. My favorite Elena character model is the Uncharted 1 model, my favorite Nathan model is the Uncharted 2 model, and my favorite Sully model is... well, you got me there. The dude looks amazing in all three games.
You got a great ass, Sully.
Thanks.
But anyway, we spot Marlowe's hideout and...
Looks like that'd hold your weight.
yeah, so? I'm not a monkey. I'm not. Alright, fine. So we make our way inside only to find a passage that leads underground, and I suppose considering the number of things we're climbing right now, I should discuss if there's been any improvement in the climbing department. And well, near I could tell, there hasn't been much. The only thing I could notice, and this wasn't so much to do with the climbing as it did with falling down. Back in the previous games, whenever Nathan would walk off a ledge, for the most part he would grab on to prevent death. Now this system for the majority of the time in the previous games was automated. I mean, it's better to have Nate grab everything to prevent death instead of grabbing nothing. But that said, this introduces a nitpick that I failed to mention in my review of the second game, mostly due to it being a nitpick, and I did not think to mention it until I played this game, and it's the fact that when the game points you forward, as in this is the path that you need to proceed, Nate would not distinguish it from a normal ledge, causing him to grab on, when all he wanted to do was move forward. And this is an area where the third game improved, because in the third game, Nate seems to be able to distinguish between moments where he should just move forward and moments where he should just grab on to not die. And that's really all I have to say regarding that subject, because correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nothing else to mention here other than in stealth segments you are now able to lunge at enemies as though you were Kratos, which having done it in the third game, I kinda wish it was in the second game as well, especially considering the vertical level design in some instances in that game. Now the gun combat on the other hand, I do have quite a few things to mention about that, but we will get there soon enough. Next we locate Marlowe's library, at which point everyone there realizes that they have been followed, and so Nate and the gang take the opportunity to take whatever they need from the library, and once they uncover their next destination, an ambush happens, and this is the first shootout in the game, and this is where I'll be discussing the main differences regarding the gun combat between the second and third game. And well, I'm happy to report that it's tighter. Now I don't know if you can classify it as better, because honestly this is one of those things that could totally fall to being a matter of preference, but to me at least, I enjoy the shooting in the third game more than I do the second game, because again the shooting is tighter. While I get why the second game was the way it was, I mean the shooting in that game and the way the characters react is very expressive, made to almost simulate a movie or real life or something. While it's cool to look at, it made getting accurate shots more difficult, and I feel that Uncharted 3 achieved the perfect balance. The gun and Nate don't flop around as much, yet still maintain their expressiveness, and it's easier to get headshots in this game than it was in the second game. Now again, this is a matter of personal preference, since I could totally imagine a person telling me to simply get good at the shooting in Uncharted 2. That said, at the end of the day, I'm fine with both. It's not like I missed the shooting in 3 when I was playing Uncharted 2, but I will tell you what I do miss when I play the second game, the fact that in the third game you can toss toss back grenades at enemies. My god, I love this feature. It has saved my ass a bunch of times, especially when I'm running low on bullets. And that feature really is my only major criticism of Uncharted 2, but considering the graphical and technical leap from Uncharted 1 to Uncharted 2, I won't give Naughty Dog too much shit for it. Moreover, the second game was the one that added the ability to grab, toss, and blow up propane tanks, something that I also neglected to mention in my Uncharted 2 review, despite it being one of my favorite aspects of that game. Being able to kill a whole bunch of people at once with a perfectly timed throw is exhilarating. But anyways, after all the fighting, we escaped this place and learned that we need two pieces of a map, the first one being in France and the second one being in Syria. The gang splits into two. The first group, which naturally includes Nate and Sully, they go to France, while the second group, Cutter and Chloe, head to Syria, and in France is where we encounter our first real puzzle in the game. And what do I have to say about them? Well, they might just be my favorite puzzles in the series. I love the puzzles in Uncharted 2, especially the way Naughty Dog incorporated the platforming to it. In this game, however, the puzzles might not be as platform heavy as they were in the second game, but they are, well, I don't know the right word for it aside from maybe entertaining. Like, take this first puzzle here. Solving the puzzle was fun enough, but I love the way Sully suggests that the path might be on the other side of the fireplace, only for Nate to disregard it as too obvious, only to be proven wrong a little later. Well, the second game also had instances like this.
Alright, hey, come on, admit it. You're impressed.
I am. I'll throw you a banana.
They weren't as character involved as they were in the third game, like when you all had to team up to solve the globe puzzle, but also again, this is one of those instances where I really could go either way. I like the way the second game handled the puzzles, but I also like the way the third game handled the puzzles, with my favorite Uncharted puzzle being the guy trying to stab the other guy in the heart. While not particularly clever or difficult, I just love the setting. The way the chamber was designed, like this is such a simple puzzle, yet it requires so much work and space from a development perspective. It's humorous to think about the amount of coding that went into making this, as well as the man hours. And that covered, I know so far I seem to be pretty even on both games. If that's the case, then why do I think the second game is better? Well, to talk about that, we need to finish the story first. In France, Nate and Sully find the first half of the map that they need. However, before managing to escape, they get ambushed by Talbot, who locks them inside and runs off with the map, at which point they also try to burn the mansion down. Couple that with spiders, and this is one intense scene. Was I the only one during this entire section that was worried about Sully? The dude is 60 years old, and I swear I never knew I could worry about a fictional character this much in my entire life. Like, I was seriously scared for the old man, but thankfully they both make it out and off they go to Syria, where we find the other piece of the map. But guess what? Talbot ambushes them again and takes the other half of the map. And are you guys starting to notice a pattern yet? No? Well, they go to Yemen, solve a few puzzles, and get the location of Atlantis of the Sands, and then, yeah, you guessed it, ambush. And this is my main issue with Uncharted 3. It's the story. I think the script is funny, and the backstory of Nate and Sully was very well handled. But the way the game's story progressed was less than ideal. Even me, a guy who lets things slip every once in a while for the sake of enjoying the game, got bugged about this. Furthermore, unfortunately, the rough story progression also seeped its way into the gameplay. Because take this scene in Yemen, where after Nate confronts Marlowe, who reveals Nathan's past, Nate runs off chasing Talbot. And may I ask, why did this scene happen? I mean, the guy for hire is sitting right there. It does not make any sense whatsoever for Talbot to run away. And what comes after is even more ridiculous. Nate gets knocked out and we end up playing this ship segment that exists for no other reason than to pad out the game. This character has no plot significance whatsoever. He's only there for this segment. And to add to that, Naughty Dog confirmed that they designed the action set pieces before actually deciding what the characters will do in them. Hence the Talbot running away action sequence. Couple those with inconsistent story pacing and you have a game that lacks the cohesiveness of the second game. For example, the ship segment is equivalent to the train segment in Uncharted 2, but where the train sequence in Uncharted 2 did serve a purpose, the ship did not. In Uncharted 2, we did not only get on the train to save Chloe, but the train was also going to where Shambhala is, and the transition from Nepal to the snow-covered mountains was very natural and made sense from a story perspective. But whereas the ship made no sense story-wise in Uncharted 3, after Nate falls into the ocean, he somehow drifts back to Yemen and finds Elena. And speaking of padding, there is a lot of that in this game that honestly takes away from the whole experience. For example, the Nathan getting drugged by Talbot sequence, and the Rubel Kali sequence, which were fun the first time but is a chore the second time, and the Nate getting on acid sequences. These sequences are fine the first time you play the game, but just like a magician's trick, end up being a hassle to go through again. Speaking of magic tricks, a lot of people, including me, when they first played the game were really confused regarding Talbot because of the scene where he got shot and ended up being fine. I especially love what Cutter had to say about it.
How is that possible? I shot him right in that disgusting Nancy boy waist.
and the scene where he disappears that made people, again including me, think that there was a supernatural element to Talbot. And when you realize that he doesn't, he does seem to come off as poorly written. But here's a surprise for you. I think that's precisely why he might be the best written character in the game. Allow me to explain. As Nate and the gang find out, Marlowe and Talbot are part of a secret society, and that secret society is known for
Controlling their enemies through espionage, deception, fear.
And that really made me think about Talbot. I mean, think about it. If Talbot is part of a secret society that control their enemies using espionage, deception, and fear, then isn't the fact that you, the player, the enemy of Talbot, failing to notice the ways behind his madness means that you fell for his espionage, deception, and fear tactics? I mean, the title of the game is Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception, or Player's Deception in this case. It's all there. This is one of those situations where the game might just be channeling Metal Gear Solid 2, where things might be more than what they seem. I mean, if Amy Hennig did intend to plan out the Talbot situation to not only trick the characters but the players as well, then that's what I mean about Talbot possibly being the best written character in the game. But then again, she might not have intended it to be this way, and I'm just presenting a different side to the argument that Talbot is a badly written character. Considering what the secret society he is part of is known for, then getting shot can be explained with a bulletproof vest, the mind control can be explained as some CIA level shit, and the disappearing can be, as Amy Hennig pointed out, using a wire. Furthermore, the way he surprised Drake both in this instance and near the end also fit in with his past. I mean, being part of a secret society where one of the things that it specializes in is espionage means that just like with the disappearing, we have no idea what Talbot has in his disposal that might help him know where Nate is to surprise him.
Not only did Elizabeth's spy network stretch all the way over here, but they were all part of some sort of hermetic secret society. The British Occult Secret Service, the School of Night, the Hellfire Club, the Order of the Golden Dawn, they're all connected.
I think what doesn't help Talbot's situation was the pacing of the story, which, speaking of the story, this is where I really started to miss Eddie Raja and why I don't think they should have killed him in the first game. Because if they really wanted to include the ship segment and have it make sense, then having Eddie there and him being a pirate already would totally fit. Like having Marlowe tell Eddie to dispose of Nathan, but because Eddie missed out on El Dorado, he decided to not let Atlantis of the Sands slip away from his hands. Personally though, if I were to write the game's story and where the developers left me no Eddie, this is how I would have done it. I would not have waited till the end to show Atlantis of the Sands. Many treasure hunting movies and games do this, where they leave the big reveal for the end. I would have done it differently by revealing Atlantis of the Sands midway through the game and then have the good guys fight the bad guys in it, with the bad guys actually making off with the treasure for once. After which Nate gets on the plane with the treasure, crashes the plane, and unluckily crashes it near the pirate ship, at which point this guy takes advantage of the situation by claiming the treasure for himself, and unironically this guy becomes the final villain of the game, with the ship sequence being the finale segment in the game. And after drowning everything, have Sully show up with his plane that he bought thanks to staying behind to get whatever treasure he can, and this is where the game ends. If they had done that, not only would the pacing been better, but the ship sequence would have made sense, and the bad guys would have had a temporary victory, and finally this guy would have made actual sense instead of being padding, though I still would have preferred the Eddie Raja version. Good god, do I miss that idiot. Now, taking all that into account, I seem to be pretty down on the story, which I really am not. I mean, okay, so taking into consideration what counts, the game did the most important parts really well, which first, the script is funny, which to me is the most important thing when it comes to an Uncharted game, and two, the backstory between Nate and Sully was handled better than I could have ever imagined, which, let's face it, if the backstory was handled poorly, then that would have affected the rest of the story of the game, no matter how good the rest of the story was of the game, which, yeah, the game would have been a tormenting experience to play, but luckily, this is being a video game, this is where my review, turns to positive. My first point is regarding plot holes in video games. It's shocking the number of people that think that just because they can't think of an explanation for something they don't get regarding a video game story, then it must be a plot hole. Jesus, how arrogant can you be? Uncharted 3 is the biggest example of this, and other prime examples of this is how nobody liked MGS2 back in the day. But when people finally managed to pretty much dismantle the story, it's now regarded to be perhaps Hideo Kojima's most brilliant work. And the last example that always bugs me on some level is Sonic Adventure 2, with how people don't get how the gun soldiers mistook Sonic for Shadow, even though I thought the explanation was pretty obvious. But anyways, in this case I'm talking about the whole Talbot running away sequence. I actually managed to come up with an explanation for that, and it's that, as you can see, as soon as Drake starts running, the police start chasing him, and then in this sequence over here where Talbot runs inside the house, he sees the cops in there and then he runs right back outside. This indicates that the cops are neither on his nor Drake's side, and this could be the reason why he ran away, because Marlowe is sitting right there. If Talbot didn't run away, then Drake could have implicated her when the cops arrested both of them. So Talbot running away was apparently the smart choice. So yes, the story has pacing issues and is not as tight as the second game, or even the first game, but again, this is a video game, and if you look at it purely as that, then aside from the hallucinating sequences and the desert sequence, this game is fun as hell. And remember that ship segment that I said was padding out the game? Well, guess what? That's my personal favorite segment in the entire game.
Marco.
I mean, it's just pure ridiculousness and straight up gameplay, and since, as you guys know, that I love the shooting in the Uncharted series, this segment, which by the way is only an hour long, well, a little over an hour long if you're a first time player, which is not really that long. It's really fun though from a challenging and gameplay perspective. Not only that, the horse segment is more fun than the snow section in Uncharted 2. The plane segment just speaks for itself, honestly, in terms of straight up set pieces in the Uncharted series. This one in the third game takes the cake. I mean, just look at the soldier. If you thought the guys in Uncharted 2 were dedicated, you have not seen this guy. I mean, my god, what dedication. Hey, henchman number 1264. You are on a cargo plane. That's normal so far. And that had stuff hanging out from it. And while holding on to dear life, you were shooting the person behind you who was also hanging on for dear life. So then he grabs you and pulls you, and you end up falling from a height of almost 40,000 feet. How the hell did you survive? Excuse me? So yeah, moving on with my point, whether it be the plane scene, the many puzzles, the burning mansion, and more, there is one thing that Uncharted 3 is indeed if you look past the uneven story, and that's the game is fun. In fact, Uncharted 3 might be the only game in the series where I actually seem to like it the more I play it, because the more I play it, the less I focus on the story and the more I focus on the actual gameplay of the game. Which, speaking of the gameplay, I find that the areas in Uncharted 3 are much better designed than the ones in Uncharted 2, because the areas in Uncharted 3 are much less vertical than the ones in Uncharted 2, and if you recall, that was one of my very few nitpicks of the second game. Uncharted 3, on the other hand, clearly understands what perfectly fits in with Nate's gameplay, and it complements it. That said, however, the gameplay does have an issue, that while the areas are better for battle in Uncharted 3, Naughty Dog seems to have tripled the number of enemies. My god, even I admit this is a little too much. I mean, seriously, the game gets ridiculous with how many enemies it throws at you. I mean, take a look at this section over here near the end where the cutscene ends, and just about when the game loads, holy shit, look at that enemy, look at that. At least let me get ready, guys. Funny thing about this segment is that this is where the game actually crashed on me. Yes, a video game on a console crashed on me. I couldn't believe it either. Reminded me of that nerve-wracking feeling you would get as soon as you would load up a scratched PS1 or PS2 disc. I never knew this was possible in this day and age. My disc is spotless, though what's funny about it is that I have the God of War theme on my PS4, and so when the game crashed, this is what I heard playing in the background. It wasn't all doom and gloom. I mean, the game saved so frequently that I was only set back a minute. But anyway, back to the large number of enemies, like in this segment over here where they block your field of vision using sand in an area with 3 tank SUVs, each equipped with a freaking Gatling gun. So yeah, the gunfights get insane in this game, which, believe it or not, introduced something I never expected to see in an Uncharted game, and that's trial and error. As you guys may recall, I beat the second game twice and I beat the third game twice, and I noticed that my second playthrough of Uncharted 2 was not really that much different from my first, while with Uncharted 3 my second playthrough went a lot smoother, because I died so many times in my first that actually knowing where the enemies came from just made the game better, I guess. So yeah, there is trial and error in this game. The number of soldiers is insane, but again, as I always say when it comes to Uncharted, you can either get good or go back to the start menu and choose an easier difficulty. Now, time to finish up that story. Moving a little back to get some perspective, we're gonna take off from the Syria chapter, where after Cutter gets his leg broken and we make a getaway, we head to Yemen.
Why this obsession? I'm just worried.
I can take care of myself, all right?
I'm not talking about you.
What, Sully?
He would go to the ends of the earth for you, Nate. Just don't ask him to.
I'm getting too old for this bullshit.
Come on, now don't you start this again.
Listen, I don't have your luck. Guys like me gotta know when to walk away from the table.
Sully, we're gonna get out of this, okay? We always do.
Yeah. You go meet your girl in Nepal. I'm going somewhere warm.
Come on.
Hey, you can tell me all about it when you get back.
And this is what happens when you try to make an Uncharted game more serious than it should be. While Uncharted 1 was too campy, Uncharted 2 sat at the perfect spot. Uncharted 3, however, moved a little to the right, which I think is what hurt it. But anyway, moving on to Nate and Elena. Now, I don't know what the exact situation is here, whether they're married or just engaged, but apparently they had a falling out since the second game. But nevertheless, she helps us in Yemen, and it is here where we find the puzzle that I talked about earlier, the one that I liked so much. After which, just like the France chapter, spiders show up, and we make our escape just to get ambushed, and this is where Talbot does his little thing to Nate. And this is how he gets caught, because he just freaks the out. And after we wake up, we are faced with Marlowe, who reveals, as far as I'm concerned, Nathan's actual past, after which we do that whole sequence with Talbot again, get surprise attacked by the pirate.
You insult me. You're a pirate and a good businessman.
Alright, I take back what I said. I love how this guy shows up out of nowhere. People might just complain that he doesn't fit anywhere in the story, but you wanna know what I say? Sometimes shit happens. I mean, how many times did you wake up in the morning with your day planned only to have unexpected events happen to you throughout the day? Events that you didn't plan for or anticipate. A well thought out story from an analytical perspective is fun, but from a spontaneous perspective, not so much. Besides, Uncharted has always been a series of ridiculous set pieces, whether it be climbing up a train, hanging on the edge of a cliff in sub-zero temperatures with the main protagonist having a bullet wound, or free falling with no parachute, or being on a sinking ship in the middle of the ocean. So, Uncharted 3. Sometimes shit happens. Because again, gameplay wise, the ship graveyard section is my favorite section in the entire game, albeit a very difficult one, because yes, the difficulty spike is very notable. That said, this section beats the intro to Uncharted 4. You're firing rocket launchers, jumping on other boats and such, much more interesting than the intro of Uncharted 4, where it was basically the same thing but less. And off we get to the ship, which was a very intense section. There was a sort of helplessness to Nate that we never have seen before. Like, remember how I said I was worried about Sully and the mansion escape sequence? Well, I felt the same exact way about Nathan in this segment, because first we have no idea where the hell we are, and getting stranded in the graveyard with no plane, no boat means certain death. And my god, there are so many enemies in this place, not to mention the ship starts to sink. This might just be the most intense moment in the Uncharted series. It was even more intense than when Nathan got shot in Uncharted 2, at least to me. Anyway, after the ship sunk and Nathan drifts to Elena, we learn that Marlowe has Sully, who knows the location of Atlantis of the Sands because he memorized its location when we were in the puzzle room in Yemen. And since the quickest way to traverse the Rubal Khali Desert, which as Sully puts it,
Small problem. The Rubal Khali Desert, 600 miles across. The Bedouin go around the damn thing.
How are we going to get across 600 miles of impassable wasteland?
It's in the middle of the desert. So technically it'd be about 300 miles.
solution? Nate sneaks his way into a cargo plane where that whole sequence happens, and to be quite frank, if it was me in there, then I would have waited until the plane landed. But thankfully he did not, because now we get to experience the best Uncharted set piece. After that, we ended up in the desert where Nate wakes up for about 15 minutes in real time to drive the point that yes, he is in the desert, and yes, there is a mirage as you would expect. But my favorite part about all of this is the fact that Nate gets so thirsty that he will die if he doesn't get water. But the moment he sees enemies, it's off to killing again like he was never thirsty. Guess his bloodlust is greater than his thirst for water. I mean, need I remind you guys that his first confirmed kill was at the age of 15? And that's only as far as we know. But anyways, after the number of enemies we killed gets to the point where it's frankly ridiculous, we get rescued by Selim, which gives us a horse and... Wow. Anyways. So after we play an upgraded version of the chase segment in Uncharted 2, which gotta admit was really fun. It's amazing how they programmed Nate to get on the horse even if you jump from weird angles. But anyways, this is where we save Sully, after which we go to stop Marlowe and Talbot. And this is where we get into the fight with the 3 Gatling gun SUVs, and I gotta admit, I enjoy the ridiculousness of the whole situation. After this, we open the doors to Atlantis of the Sands, and oh my, what a view. But celebrations are cut quick when Nate drinks from the water and goes nuts. Later on we learn...
What eclipse? Look, kid, you went nuts right after you drank from that fountain.
And there you have it. They want the thing in the water that's causing this. I assume at least that's what it seems like to me. Which, I assume you guys wanted me to talk about the whole Sully getting fake shot thing, which I'm glad they didn't actually kill him, but if they did, this should be the way they do it. A lot of people said they knew he didn't die because the scene wasn't as intense or as glorified, and at least to me, that's what I think death should be. Death happens in an instant sometimes, and it's not even logical most of the time, but death coming unexpectedly is perhaps what makes it the most real. Though it doesn't make for a very entertaining experience, I'll give you guys that, it's certainly, at least to me, the most real and effective way. Naughty Dog, I said real and effective, but regardless, he doesn't actually die, which again makes me not enjoy this whole sequence on repeated playthroughs. The game takes itself way too seriously with its story that slips into the gameplay sometimes in segments like this. I don't know if you noticed this, but I never really spoke in depth about the villains in Uncharted 1 in my review because, well, they don't have any depth to them, and Naughty Dog understood that, which is why they never let them get in the way of the actual gameplay. The villains in Uncharted 1 exist solely for 2 scenes, the first one where they shoot Sully and the last one for the end. During the rest of the game though, they do absolutely nothing, which is a good thing, because that means that these shallow villains did not get in the way of the gameplay with unnecessary segments like this, or in the way of the humorous writing and the character bonding moments. Uncharted 1 is essentially a campy game about the 3 main trio, Nate, Sully, and Elena. The villains are not good, but that's not a problem because they don't slip into the gameplay and ruin the pace of the gameplay and story, which is why I didn't speak about them too much in my review, because honestly complaining about the villains in Uncharted 1 with how the story and atmosphere of the game is played out is like complaining that Bowser from Mario is too one-dimensional. This, however, unfortunately does not apply to Uncharted 3, because I bet you anything that if Naughty Dog cut back on the emotional scenes and just focused on the gameplay, people would not have been as loud about the villains in Uncharted 3. The game should have included the flashbacks and the past that was told by Marlowe and then just left things at that. Because the Uncharted series, with how it's paced and designed, the story works best as a slow onion peel. Too much information dump is not good for a series like this. That said, no one can expect Naughty Dog to make Uncharted games forever. Not to mention that they almost never had a franchise outlive a console, and because of that we get all that info and intensity in Uncharted 3. And this is another reason why TV shows are better than movies when it comes to character building, which unfortunately for Uncharted 3 it doesn't have the luxury that TV shows do. But anyway, after that segment we find Sully alive and we get to Marlowe, ruin her day and try to escape this place before it crumbles. Why is the place crumbling? Well, Nathan fired 3 bullets.
3 goddamn bullets? How the hell did you do this with 3 bullets? Holy shit!
During our escape, we run into Marlowe and Talbot, whereas Marlowe sinks in sand while spewing a bunch of nonsense. We end up fighting Talbot, who tries to avenge her, and I know I'm supposed to whine and say I didn't like this fight, because it essentially just pushed the button on the screen. While it's by no means my favorite, I had fun with it, thanks to the setting, Sully intervening, saving him, and then getting the hell out of that place. And besides, after all the enemies I had to fight to get to this point, I was glad the final boss was the way it was. Which, speaking of boss fights, one thing you will never hear people say about a boss fight is that it's decent or fun. To most people, a boss fight is really good, or it's the worst thing they ever played. There is never a middle ground with people when it comes to bosses, which I find rather questionable, because logically speaking, the final fight in Uncharted 2 wasn't bad. Mechanically, it's clever and it works, and it's okay if you don't like it. The same applies to the one in Uncharted 3. Those are not bad final boss fights. They're certainly not amazing, but they're not the opposite of that either. I'm serious. Take a shot every time someone doesn't go to an extreme of amazing or horrible when it comes to bosses, and you wanna know what? You will never get drunk or even tipsy. But anyway, after that final boss and the escape, we learned that Sully took a few pieces of gold with him and he bought a new plane with it.
It's not as nice as the one you 2 wrecked 4 years ago, but it'll do. Come on, let's see if I can remember how to fly the goddamn thing.
And that's the game. All that's left to talk about aside from the bonus content is the treasures in this game. They don't really glow like they did in the second game, which now to me seems to be the only reason I collected them in the second game. Ooh, shiny! So yeah, me like shiny things. So to that, I only collected whatever I saw and didn't really pay attention to it in Uncharted 3. That said, Uncharted 3, much like Uncharted 1, gives me a strange urge of wanting to platinum the game. I mean, I credit that to mostly the ship graveyard and tighter controls, but still I find that interesting. And lastly, the multiplayer, which yeah, again, I'm really surprised that there are still people playing the game, which thinking about it, PSN is still free on PS3. I wonder if that's the reason. But anyway, the Uncharted 3 multiplayer is actually quite lively. I got into matches much more easily when compared to Uncharted 2, which brings me to another point. Uncharted 3 requires an online pass if you'd want to access the multiplayer. What are online passes, you ask? Well, it's something that I thought was going to go mainstream given how greedy publishers are. But to the best of my knowledge, online passes were a short-lived thing, and it was a thing that basically required you to use a code that came with the game if you bought it online to access the multiplayer. And if you bought the game used with a code already redeemed for a small fee, you could buy a new code. If you care for the multiplayer, that is. So yeah, this was the publisher's way of making lost profit back due to used game sales. But anyway, again, since I'm not much of an online multiplayer kind of person, all I can say is that the multiplayer works, it's free, and it's fun for what it is. And finally, time to talk about the bonus content in the game. Now, I didn't talk about the bonus content in the previous two games, mostly because of the fact that all three games share the same kind of bonus content. So I decided to leave that for the end, so whatever I say now will generally apply to all the bonus content available to the three games. In the bonus menu, you are given access to all the main story cutscenes available to all three games, as well as a reward section that enables you to activate various effects as well as cheats. Do note that you need to do more than simply beating the game to unlock all that's there. For the most part, you need to collect all the treasures and beat the game on the harder difficulties. As for the treasure collecting thing, some rewards need 20, some need 40, and you get the idea. And the thing that I like about this is that it's nice to see Naughty Dog embracing their collectathon past. While the render modes aren't really my thing since the choices are so limited, what's in the tweak menu is where the magic is. You can set more than one option as you can see, and they allow you to do different things to the game, with my favorite one being the mirror world tweak, which honestly just makes you feel like you're playing an entirely different game. I mean, I played these games so much that until I used the mirror world tweak, I never noticed how much of my playing is based on muscle memory, and that I actually died a few times while having this tweak on because my brain wanted to go one way while my muscle memory pushed me in another way. And for this effect specifically, it really does add replayability to the games. I mean, if you thought the ship graveyard was difficult, try it with the mirror tweak, and seriously, good luck. Look at that, you can choose different skins while playing the story mode. I just wish the cutscenes would have the Chloe skin too. I mean, can you imagine two Chloes talking to each other?
Wait here, I'll see if I can find a way around.
Okay, I'll pretend I did not hear that. But anyways, in addition to all that, you also have the option to auto-equip any weapon in the game, assuming you unlocked it first. And finally, to end all finallys, if you go back to the menu, then go back into the bonus section, we can view concept art. And well, there is nothing else to say. I mean, I'm not really interested in that stuff. Some of it is cool, like seeing early designs for some of the characters like Elena, but I know that a lot of people are into that, so have fun, I guess. And with that, we have come to the end of the Uncharted series of reviews, and oh yeah, I was gonna explain why I won't be reviewing Uncharted 4, even though I already beat it and recorded all of it. And well, to put it simply, the main reason is Uncharted Golden Abyss. As you guys know, I have no way of recording gameplay footage from my Vita yet, and I would hate to review Uncharted 4 and just leave my Uncharted Golden Abyss review just hanging there. If I'm going to revisit the series again, I just want to do both and officially be done with the Uncharted series. That's the first reason. The second reason will go into spoilers, so skip to this part of the video if you don't want the fourth game spoiled.
Okay, I'll push, you pull. On 3, ready?
Wait, 1, 2, pull, or 1, 2, 3, pull?
Just pull.
Got it.
Now for the second reason being that I don't consider Uncharted 4 as canon, and I don't count the story or ending as part of the official series timeline for the simple reason that Amy Hennig, the actual creator of the series, not only left before Uncharted 4 was done, but had her script completely changed. And she is to Uncharted as Hideo Kojima is to the Metal Gear franchise. And just like there is no real Metal Gear game after Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, there is no real Uncharted game after Uncharted 3. So no, Nate does not have a brother, this is not his backstory, and no, Drake did not suffer that boring ending. But I will get to Uncharted 4 in due time. Now, while Uncharted Golden Abyss is not part of the main series, and considering the fact that the last time I played it was years ago, all I remember that I enjoyed my time with it, but then again, wait for the review when it happens. Whew, finally I'm done. These scripts just kept getting longer and longer and longer and longer. And you know, I'd like to take a break from doing long, in-depth reviews and actually review something more current and playful so that, you know, videos are able to come out much faster And after doing that for a while, I'll come back to doing in-depth reviews. So, final thoughts on Uncharted 3? Well, you know, if you're the analytical type of person where you notice the littlest things in video games and they bother you so much that you don't enjoy the game, then I'm afraid you're not going to like Uncharted 3 very much. But if you're the type of person who, you know, likes to have fun, just wants to have one hell of a ride, then I think Uncharted 3 delivers. As for me, I seem to be lucky enough to be able to notice faults in video games, but for the sake of enjoying the game, I'm willing to let a few of them slip to enjoy the game. But yeah, so, and Uncharted 3 for me seems to be one of those games that the more I play it, the more I just like it. So, yeah, with that being said, for those of you guys who are watching, wherever you may be in this world, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time with an indie marathon. So stay alive until then.